Okay, welcome. So today's webinar is all about the powerful simplicity of Apporto with a feature showcase or feature highlight on browser access. And we'll talk about in a second why we feel that that's important and some of the challenges that it will help solve. By way of introduction, my name is Phil Spitze, a solutions architect here at Apporto. Long and storied past in IT. I've held lots of different roles, worked in lots of different sectors, including higher ed, and had participated in a lot of different areas of delivering software and desktops and compute out to campuses and to companies. If you're new to Apporto, welcome. We are a Silicon Valley-based company with currently over 200 higher ed customers, which is where we got our start. So we are branching out into other sectors beyond higher ed and education, but a lot of the same challenges exist. We strive to make every customer a reference, and we do that by providing a top-level service across all parts of the relationship. We also enjoy, and our customers enjoy, a very quick onboarding experience, typically around 2 weeks. We can go as fast as you need us to, but it's quite a bit faster than other solutions where you may have weeks or even months of prep time. We can have you up and running much more quickly. So the game and service that we provide is around virtual computer labs. We can provide Windows, Linux, and Mac-based computers in the cloud. We also offer cyber labs for MIS courses, computer science courses, engineering, also cybersecurity. And then further, we can offer cloud desktops for secure employee access, for employee training, as well as remote vendor access. So really, there's a very broad range of services that come with Apporto. And we do present as a fully managed service. So everything below the orange line are things that we're taking care of inside the Apporto cloud in terms of infrastructure, all of the troubleshooting, backups, alerting, cost optimization, et cetera. What our customers work with is above the line. So we give everybody a very simple admin console, again, in the browser, and they are able to manage users, applications, and images. And then all end users get a very easy to use cloud desktop solution. So that is really one of the big value adds and one of the reasons we're able to move so quickly with customers. So again, the topic focus today is around browser access. And some of the points we'll touch on is the fact that it's a clientless experience, and I'll show that in the demos. It is going to provide true equitable access to all students or users. Everyone will get an identical experience, which can be quite important from particularly in education, the teaching experience. We make it extremely easy to access cloud and device storage, and I'll show you that. And then there is definitely a benefit around digital literacy, and I'll talk more about that in a second. So from the client list standpoint, it's important to understand that endpoints and the management of endpoints and the installation of clients onto endpoints actually creates quite a bit of support overhead. There's some risk involved, and I've got some facts here, some data points from recent research. So if we think about endpoints as the way that most users are going to access software or going to access compute resources, It's rather striking to know that 42% of all endpoints are unprotected, meaning there's no malware protection, no antivirus, and really it's just kind of an open playing field for those bad actors out there. Further, across all reported breaches, 70% of those started on the endpoint. And you can see how that makes sense. You've got 42% that are unprotected. That leads to 70% of breaches. And then to compound the matter a little bit further, 94% of all organizations use some kind of VPN service. And when you install a VPN client onto an endpoint, you're really just opening the floodgates for attacks into your network and into your private and secure data. So that some very scary numbers there to take into consideration. When we present Apporto in a browser, a lot of those numbers fall out of play because it's it's not impossible, but it is much more difficult to breach the browser boundary in order to gain access to internal resources. If you think of the analogy of your company or your school's website, it's just out there. People can browse it. Any kind of endpoint can log in and look at it, but there's really no further connection that they can make to in order to get into your network. And that's the same kind of approach that we're using with Apporto. So very, very secure and low risk in that standpoint. From the support standpoint, a lot of our customers, again, higher ed, have reported that about 35% of all support tickets are related to software installation, which would include clients, whether it's a VDI client, whether it's some kind of application virtualization client. It all involves effort by the user, support by the help desk or the service desk, and that's a large number of tickets, 35%. So there's some benefits there to having everything just be browser based. Continuing on, looking at it from an equitable access standpoint, we're seeing a lot of penetration into the market by folks with Chromebooks, with Macs, and with iPhones, iPads, Android tablets, etc. And by and large, the majority of software out there is Windows based. So how are those folks on those types of devices going to gain access to Windows software or Windows computers, right? In the higher ed space, it's going to a computer lab, which isn't a great experience. In business, if there is a BYOD policy, there's got to be some other option to access those resources that are Windows based. Typically, it's VDI from the company's data center. But again, a couple of interesting data points. According to CNBC, 60% of all K through 12 schools in the US are using Chromebooks. Those students are going to then graduate and go to college, university, probably will bring their Chromebooks with them. And then once they graduate from college, they're going to then, enter the workforce, possibly with no experience around use of Windows. And that's where we come on to the idea of digital literacy, right? As of a year ago from Ars Technica, the market share of Windows in enterprise is still over 80%. So how are students running on Chromebooks or Macs? How are they getting the experience with Windows that they're going to then need in order to enter the workforce? And a couple of data points here. 25% of first-time workers will tend to avoid participating in a meeting if they fear that their tech tools might fail. That's a pretty high number of recent graduates, first-time workers, who are kind of sitting on the sidelines and potentially not engaging with the rest of their colleagues. Similarly, a survey run by Salesforce each year called the Future of Work Survey found that 27% of all current workers felt they lacked confidence in their own set of digital skills. So again, there's an opportunity here to really help build out the experience and the exposure to just technology in general, but Windows in particular, and all the software that goes along with different courses of study, different professions, et cetera. And that's, again, how easy it can be done with Apporto and being able to connect just through a browser. Lastly, as I mentioned, we do make it extremely easy to connect to cloud storage in order to access and retrieve files. And we support the major players with OneDrive, Google Drive, Dropbox, Box. We can even connect back to the corporate network. So if there are shared folders or user home drives, those can be presented as well. And again, I'll show that in the demo as well. The way we like to sum it up, and as you saw from the title, Wi-Fi and a browser, and you're done. And not only is that from the end user and student experience, really it's from the admin experience well, because again, as that fully managed service, we're able to take on a lot of the workload of setting up, configuring, supporting, and maintaining the environment. And you can just use your browser to administer it. So with that, I'll switch over to a live demo. So I'm going to log into our demo environment here. And just a quick note that we do support a number of different authentication mechanisms. Single sign-on is very popular. In the education space, we do support the major LMS systems. And we can also just read straight from your LDAP directory, whether it's Active Directory or some other directory service to get user information. So I'm going to log in as a user, be taken through to the Apporto service. And the starting point for all users is the App Store. And this is just a simple presentation of the different pieces of software or the different environments that I might have access to. So you can see here, I've got a link out to the Help Center that could be quite useful. I've got a Linux-based Cyber Lab. I've got Excel that I can run in the browser, SolidWorks that I can run in the browser. I've got a Mac desktop. I'll come back to that in a second. And obviously a Windows desktop. And then, entering into any of these and starting use of these is as simple as the click of a launch button. It opens up another tab, logs me automatically into a cloud desktop, and I'm able to start work with whichever piece of software I might need to use. So if I'm a student and I've got a homework assignment in SolidWorks, I can get to work on that. If I am a professional and I'm reviewing some, AutoCAD diagrams, I can hop in and do that. If I'm in the accounting team and I need to open up the accounting software and get to work, it's all just a normal computer experience, just in a browser. So that, again, really opens up the doors from the simplicity standpoint and from a BYOD standpoint. So you can see I've got lots of software available to me here. While I'm here, let me just point out, as I mentioned, access to cloud storage. So we do offer, as part of our service, this Apporto Cloud Mounter utility. And this is how I'm able, as a user, to connect to Google Drive, OneDrive, Box, Dropbox, et cetera. And that makes it very easy for me to store files, retrieve files, make changes, that kind of thing. And particularly in the education market, it's very, very popular for all of the users to have one of these facilities. So that's a Windows experience from a Windows laptop, which is what I'm presenting from. Let me switch over just for a second to my Mac and we'll look at the experience there. So I'm going to stop sharing just for a moment and we'll pick it up over here on the Mac. Just get the right buttons clicked. All right. So again, I'm sitting at the same login screen. And on the Mac, obviously I'm using Safari. That's going to be kind of the default browser. I do have Chrome installed. I could launch it from that. It doesn't matter. We support all the major browsers. Again, I can just log in. Again, take into the same App Store experience. And I can go ahead and launch, for example, that same Windows desktop. And it just connects me into the Apporto service and I'm able to get started. One of the other fun things that we do is we offer all users a persistent profile. So there are some advantages there around experience. If I drop this file for the webinar on my desktop, regardless of where I log in from, it will always be there. And that seems like a relevant message for today's topic. So here I am now able to access Windows software from a Mac. So that worked out quite well. So we'll close that. And I'm going to switch now back to my Windows machine again, because maybe now I'm a student and I'm enrolled in, let's say, an Apple app, mobile app development type course. But I have a Windows machine and I need Xcode, which only runs on a Mac. So I do have access to a Mac desktop. Again, I can just launch that. And what I'm going to get now is a full Mac desktop in the browser. So there's lots of crossing of the streams, if you will, almost, where there's a lot of different options and lots of different ways to slice and dice the service to meet the needs of your particular organization and your particular use case. So again, super powerful, very easy. Everything is just done right in the browser. So it's going to log me into a Mac, and then you'll see that I have access to Mac-based software from a Windows 11 laptop. Historically, this would be, again, going to a lab, maybe on campus that is full of Macs, or if I'm in an enterprise, being assigned a Mac for temporary use, something along those lines. And if I just open up the Launchpad, you can see here's Xcode. I could start my application development work right inside the browser on a Mac, but connecting from a Windows machine. I don't actually have access to a Chromebook to show that, but you can imagine this experience is going to be exactly the same. So we'll close out that. So that was really the kind of the gist. I will just take a quick second and just kind of show off a little bit. For the admins in the audience, everything again is just done through the browser. So you can manage the applications, the publishing of the apps, users and groups. Some interesting feature settings, I'll just click on this and call out. So the entire environment is extremely customizable. And you can lock down certain aspects by user or even group of user. So if you want to prevent uploads and downloads of files or screen sharing or copy and paste, maybe you're in an accounting firm and copying and pasting data is a no-no, we can disable that kind of thing. So there's lots of good options built in. We do have role-based access. And again, all of this is just managed right from a browser. There's no client, there's no special software that's needed, anything like that. I remember when I was a manager of a VDI environment, there were special tools that I had to have installed. And with Apporto, all of that goes away. So very easy to utilize as an end user, as an admin, as a student, and everything just takes place in the browser. So we love it. We think it's, again, very powerful and very simple and exciting to take advantage of. So really that wraps it up. We'll take a moment just to answer a few questions, and then just keep an eye on your email. Again, this is the first in a series of webinars, so we'll touch on some different topics, and I'll be back at the beginning of February to share some additional information around a new feature that we can cover. And then if you have any questions at all that you'd like to post now, please do. And then if you are interested in learning more, getting pricing, digging into the service as a more of a deep dive, definitely reach out to us there on email at sales@apporto.com. So Connie, any questions that we can quickly answer?
Yes, we do.
Excellent.
The first one, are all browsers supported?
Yes. So with a bit of a caveat, I will say all modern browsers. We're not going to go back to Internet Explorer 6, for example. It's too far out of date. But the major common and modern browsers are supported. And we do QA testing on Chrome, Microsoft Edge, Safari, and Firefox, which I think hold the market share by and large of all browsers. Really, if it is capable of running HTML5, then it's good to go.
Awesome, thank you. Second question is, do users need fast or broadband internet?
Excellent question. They actually don't. What they need is a low latency connection. And what that means is when connecting to the internet, there is the amount of time it takes for you to send data to Apporto or any website like Google or Facebook or Instagram, et cetera, and as well as for it to come back to your location. So as long as that's a reasonable speed back and forth, then you don't actually need a high bandwidth connection. We have many users who are in remote areas. They may be on a slower internet connection from home, but because it's low latency, then the service works just fine. So it's actually better to have a quick or a low latency, slow connection than a high latency, fast connection. And actually, let me just go back into the demo really quickly. I'll just point one quick thing out that I forgot to point out. So whenever you're in Apporto and using one of the resources, what we present up here on the toolbar is a little cell phone meter, signal meter. So this is going to give you a very quick look at your latency being the important one and bandwidth usage just being there for information purposes. You can see the bandwidth usage is extremely low. And for me, this is about my average network latency for my home in rural New York. So I'm able to work just fine. Depending on where you're located around the country, you may have slightly faster, slightly slower, but we can help address that as you get started as a customer.
Thank you. Let's see. Next question is, do you support thin or zero clients?
Yes. So this is probably coming from somebody who currently has a VDI, an on-premise VDI setup. Yeah. So as long as we can get a browser installed, or maybe the image already includes a browser, then yes, zero client or a thin client will work just fine. Again, the simplicity of Apporto is everything is done through the browser. So if we can get a browser on those devices, we can absolutely connect to Apporto and continue to use those devices as an endpoint. They are relatively cheap and easy to use, and all of the horsepower is going to come from the Apporto cloud.
Okay. This is a good one. This seems too good to be true. What's the catch?
Yes, thank you. Well, I'm glad that that's how it's coming across. Um, there really are no catches. We have a very standardized pricing model. Again, we have a 2-week onboarding, and we have an extremely high level of support and contact and focus on success for all of our customers. So hopefully there are no catches that you're able to uncover. We don't believe that there are, but I'm glad to hear that it's coming across as too good to be true. Definitely drop us a line and let's get connected and we can try to see if there are any catches, but I don't think there you will find any. Excellent, thank you.
All right, let me double check. Looks like that's all the questions we have now. That wraps it up for us.
Perfect. Well, thank you everybody for the time. Hope you are having a good week. And again, just be on the lookout for our next webinar in the series. And thank you.